Good evening, San Antonio. Welcome to Conversations with the 100. We have a great show lined up tonight. We want to thank our panelists, our moderator, all of our distinguished guests for joining us this evening. We're going to be talking about some social justice issues. And of course, we know that our education system is a hotbed for social justice recently. So tonight's conversation is going to be on schools. We have a great moderator lined up, Dr. Lawrence Scott, Assistant Professor, Texas A&M San Antonio. Doc, take it away.
All right, first and foremost, thank you all for being here. We are so excited about the information that we're going to be discussing. Thank you, Dr. Milton Fields and the 100 Black Men of San Antonio for this opportunity, and also the African American Network for broadcasting and amplifying these voices. I'm going to lend it over to our distinguished panels. We have panelists. We have Dr. Milton Fields. He is the Director of Student Affairs at Judson ISD. We have Dr. Marlon James. He's Assistant Professor of Texas A&M University. All right. And then we also have Marisa Perez-Diaz. She is Texas State Board of Education, District 3. And then we have Morgan Jones, soon to be doctor. She is a Senior Manager of DEI for the San Antonio Spurs Sports and Entertainment. All right, so I just want to start with Dr. Fields. Can you just briefly talk about, first of all, talk about who you are in your position? I know I didn't get it completely accurate, and just to clarify, Dr. Fields is actually a mentor of mine. He's been a mentor of mine for 20 years, so you know it's hard to keep up with his ascension and his blessings, but I know he was Director of Operations at Judson ISD, Associate Superintendent, but can you give us your actual accurate position? And then the first question to everyone is, what does a great school-community relationship look like? So Dr. Fields, if you can start, then we'll go to Ms. Jones, then we'll go to Dr. Marlon James, and then we'll end that question with the Honorable Marisa Perez.
Understood. I'm Rob Fields. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for Student Support Services for Judson Independent School District. Actually graduated from Judson High School. And I was formerly the principal over at Wagner High School for about 8 years and then moved to central office. The question again was, what does great community or great school and community relationships look like? Was that what? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Wow. I heard a principal the other day. He is our elementary STEAM principal, Mr. Scott Wilson for Eloff Elementary in the district. And he made a statement about the mission and vision for his campuses. But the way that he placed it was eloquent. He said, I want our community and staff to work together to create innovative students from diverse backgrounds to become critical thinkers, visionaries. I want us to do this through collaboration with our parents, our students, solving real world problems and motivating and teaching our students to adapt and find those innovative solutions to local and global problems and challenges. I thought that was really articulate, the way that he did that. And academically, that's what I believe that relationship looks like. Now, when it comes to social, emotionally, and school culture, I think that since the COVID, one of the big things is social media has really hit us hard, and we need to redevelop the relationships between education and our community. The old school of just sitting down, having conversations, going back and forth, and dialoguing to come up with solutions or either agree on the consequences that we provide in this process. That would be my answer to that question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Fields. And next we have Ms. Morgan Jones from San Antonio Spurs.
Thank you so much, Dr. Scott. Again, my name is Morgan Jones, and I work with the San Antonio Spurs, leading all of our diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice efforts across our organization. So that's looking at things internally, from pay equity to our hiring process, and then to externally looking at how do we be good stewards of our community. And so when we think about what does school and community relationships look like, first is recognizing that school is a part of the community. And so how do we get aligned on mission and vision? I love what Dr. Fields talked about in the example of the school and their mission and vision. So understanding, how do we wrap around the schools in our community to support them? If you think about the old school saying of it takes a village to raise kids, right? And so if we think about that from the corporate perspective, how are we helping the schools in our community to prepare our future generation leaders and getting them ready for a workforce or military or whatever their trajectory looks like? How do we wrap around those schools to be able to accomplish that? And then how do we fill needs that they may have, right? Understanding, during the summertime, what type of programming can we offer to help them? Thinking about that social, emotional aspect of it, what type of resources, mentorship can we provide? So it's really being able to, again, be aligned and have a really solid relationship that involves communication, brainstorming with each other, and working arm in arm with each other to make sure that our students are great stewards of their community, but even sending them out into the world. And we can say, yes, we had a role or we had a hand in their success and preparing them for the future.
Outstanding. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Dr. James.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, 100 Black Men San Antonio, for having us on. Following Morgan and Dr. Rob, let's see what I can do here. So I'm gonna take you out to a couple. I'm gonna take you out to a couple of cities.
My office. Okay. Just want to let you know. Huh? No, it's just a Zoom call.
Forgive us.
I'm sorry, we're having some technical difficulties.
Please make sure they're muted.
Yeah, we're gonna ask everybody that isn't a part of the actual panel, they can move. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Right. So let's go to a couple cities. Let's go to Indianapolis, Indiana. Longtime pastor friend up there. We've known each other for 20 some odd years. And one day he calls me, he's like, Doc, I had this crazy idea to take abandoned homes and repurpose them and create micro learning centers from them. I immediately said to him, bruh, let's write this idea down. Because if you write the vision, make it plain, people will, they'll come, right? So we wrote it down. This is probably like 10 years ago now. So Micro Learning Center, they repurposed a home, named it Calvert Cheney. They, of course, brought me in because we needed to intersect with education. So this is right across the school for one of the most underserved schools they have. And walking, here's the philosophy behind the Micro Learning Center was you got to find a place within walking distance of kids, right? And you repurpose it and you create all of the enrichment activities that kids need within walking distance of their school and house. It's working, y'all. This is called the Calvert Cheney Center. He comes to me, say, hey, Doc, we need the curriculum to put into the Calvert Cheney Center. I say, okay, I'm gonna do a whole class at Texas A&M where my students just designed curriculum to go into the Micro Learning Center. But we just didn't create a curriculum from our brains. We flew into Indianapolis, spent time in the community, interviewed families and community members, and we discovered who this gentleman, Calvert Cheney, was. He was a man who did mentoring through music, right? And he took tons of young people off the streets, put them in college just by inviting them to learn how to sing in choirs. And so we developed a curriculum around music, mathematics, and mentoring for those young people. Now the schools the schools have a place where they can come and they do COVID shots, everything out of the Micro Learning Center. That's one example. In Chicago, I was assistant pastor at our local church there, professor at Loyola Chicago. So we blended those together too. Local middle school, never went to the Electric Car Association race, the National Electric Car Association race ever in its history. The place who runs it, Argonne National Laboratories, is literally 15 minutes from the school. And these are Black kids, right? So we come together, we meet with the school administration, the pastor, he has a vision to connect the school, community, and church together. He says, Doc, do your thing. So we created something called Youth Hope. We looked at all the test scores of the kids. We determined that they need help in specific areas, STEM areas. So we created a forensics lab, partnering with the local police force. We created we call it the Smartphone Genius Project, partnering with these Black women who started their own smartphone repair company, and kids were able to take phones and iPads apart and put them all back together. And we did the electric car racing, and we partnered with the Electric Car Association, and they actually built electric cars, and they came into the school and showed young people how to build electric cars. So we could just innovate. If we pull our resources, we know how to help young people, but it requires us to think creatively and for us to use our capacity that we have in our separate organizations toward common goals.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. James. All right, now we're going to turn it over to none other than the Honorable Marisa Perez about school and community relations. But before we do that, I just want to again give a shout out again to the 100 Black Men of San Antonio. All right, and then we have also the African American Network who are broadcasting this wonderful conversation. And then we also have our distinguished panelists. And then we also have, I would say, a virtual town hall that is with us right now as well. That are, we have live folks watching, but we also have a virtual town hall that have joined us as well. So thank you all for being here. All right, so the Honorable Marisa Perez, what is great school and community relationship? What does that look like?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I am on a panel with giants tonight. I love each one of the individuals I'm serving on this panel with for different professional and personal reasons. So thank you for allowing me to share in this space with you. So the first thing that comes to mind, and you know, as I was thinking about the question when everybody was talking, it is an old Mayan moral code, Inlaquech. Tú eres mi otro yo. You are the other me. And if we approach education in this way, then that is true community and school relationship, right? I think about understanding that if what we do for ourselves is how we treat others, and it's so easy, right? It sounds so simple, right? The golden rule. Then what we're truly doing is serving ourselves for the benefit of everybody. You know, as a policymaker on the State Board of Education, I go up there, I make decisions about policy that, you know, I want for my own children, right? But I understand that the decisions I'm making for my own children are the decisions that they wouldn't change for anybody else's child, because what I want for my own children is what I want for every child. That's the way we need to approach education. In that same vein, we also have to respect all of the adults in our environment. So I'm talking about everybody from the parents who may or may not have, you know, even an elementary education. They come to the conversation with knowledge. They have an education. It may not be the formal education that we know, but they come with some sort of education. I'm talking about cultural wealth, right? And recognizing that if we capitalize on the education that everybody brings to the table, we can get to that point of innovation that, you know, that Dr. James was speaking about. New ideas, you know, bred innovation in schools, conversation with individuals who have different experiences, bring different perspective and challenge us to push against status quo ways of doing education. All of that is so important, right? Those sorts of discourses lead us to making decisions that are about the community, for the community, with the community. And so that is how I truly appreciate approaching, you know, policy decisions. I'll tell you, I've had the pleasure of knowing, of getting to know Dr. Scott, Dr. James, soon to be Dr. Jones, Dr. Fields, not just through personal experiences and relationships, but also in professional settings. These individuals are 10 times smarter than me in different spaces. And so I'm lucky to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, that can help me grow in areas where I perhaps have gaps. And I think that, again, if we approach school community relations in that way, right, where we leave hubris at the door and really acknowledge everybody's perspectives, we can grow as a community together. And when we approach education in that way, we're really uplifting the entire community because everybody is heard. And what we're doing is really speaking to the needs of everybody at the table.
Thank you so much. Soon to be Dr. Marisa Perez Diaz. And just real quickly, Marisa Perez Diaz, State Board of Education, was responsible for getting African American Studies course pass for the whole state of Texas. Her and her team. All of us were a part of that team. Everyone on this panel. And then also Mexican American Studies. So Texas was the only state in the whole United States that had Mexican American and African American Studies for high school students for high school credit. So thank you so much for fighting that battle down in Austin. So we appreciate that. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Dr. Fields. Right, Dr. Fields, tell us an instance. I know this happens often as a former administrator and again under your tutelage, where there's been misunderstandings between community stakeholders and the school district. So what are some ways the district was able to mitigate those misunderstandings? Because I'm sure they happen often.
I'm really stuck on this whole social media deal. There's a couple of things that I have to clear up. I've known board member Diaz for quite some time. She's a political genius, so I beg to differ on that smarter deal. And I like the term cultural wealth because it lends itself to the question you just asked about instances where misunderstandings between community stakeholders and the school district. One of the things that I've seen, again, since we've come back from COVID with social media, is that before, if there was an issue between the community and the district, parents would call in, ask for a meeting, and we would get back. They would come in and we would sit in dialogue with what the correct response was moving forward. But what we found now is that people are expressing their concerns through social media. And I'm giving an example. I'm not trying to lend any credence to any news material that you may have seen out there. But let's say that they were saying that there was an increase in altercations at a particular campus. We're limited as to how we can respond to that due to the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. We're not allowed to, we can't go back and forth in social media. So when parents get on there and make public their concerns without allowing us to give input, then we find ourselves in a situation where, now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying social media is terrible, because it's also allowed us to do some storytelling, to talk about, things throughout the district. But when you say, have there been instances where there's been misunderstandings? Definitely. If you only hear one side of a particular concern in this particular platform, it makes it difficult. So some of the ways that we've mediated or mitigated the situation is to just fall back on policy and procedure. This is how we typically go. And the more that we're consistent with that, we're hoping that that's what disseminates across the community, and people understand that, hey, this is the policy, this is the procedure, this is how they typically move forward. We're begging for those meetings where we ask people to come in and actually dialogue with us. And our stance has to be that, privacy for the student as well as the staff members throughout the district is the utmost concern for us as we move forward. So we're just encouraging to just get back to that point where we can sit down and have one-on-one conversations.
Thank you, Dr. Fields. Now,
yes, sir.
Marisa Pettis, Member Pettis, Texas State Board has covered several curriculum-based issues. Here we go. From critical race theory to sex education in schools. What role can the community, vis-a-vis parents or community stakeholders, play in the process of curriculum development, implementation, and evaluation?
Oh my gosh, I love this question, and a tremendous role. If is the easy response. So we have opportunity at the State Board of Education to have public testimony, to have individuals actually directly impact the curriculum development by sitting on review panels. Typically, we look for expertise in subject matter, but it's open to all stakeholders. It's a democratic process. And so what we find, though, and I've been on the board almost 10 years now, and in my time on the board, we typically hear from the same communities over and over again. And so here's where the challenge is. State Board of Education meets in Austin quarterly. We meet for 3 to 4 days a week consecutively. during those meetings. It's during the day, and for many people, we're away from their home cities. So how feasible is it for your everyday 9 to 5 working individual to cut away from their job to come and testify, spend all day in Austin, sitting around in chairs waiting to testify, or coming and volunteering for free? Volunteering for free is sort of a redundant, but I have to repeat it because it is a lot of work and people volunteer their time to come and do this. But again, that means you're taking time away from work. So that process, though it's democratic, immediately cuts out a good swath of the community who is really invested in these conversations, though they can't be there. It harkens back to conversations. I mean, I worked 10 years in school districts, and specifically in community engagement, family engagement, business partnership conversations. And sometimes what I would hear is that famous trope, like, parents just don't care. And that is the furthest from the truth. You have to dig deep and understand some families, some parents are working 2 to 3 jobs at a time and can't get away for that school, meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Or even pick up their child at 4 o'clock. Heck, I can't pick up my kids at 4 o'clock in the afternoon from school. And so to expect somebody to come to Austin and give their time and take away from, what translates to food on the table, it's hard. So what every board member should do, though I know they all don't do it, the way I like to work is at home. So for those individuals who can't make it to Austin, hold community forums, right? Talk to groups of people in focus groups about some of the topics and conversations that we're going to be, taking up in Austin. And then take that feedback back and help that guide me in my decision making. Every board member has that opportunity. Whether or not it happens from district to district truly depends on the representative in the area. But the reality is, if we open space, if we create spaces in our local communities for individuals to have these conversations, and again, this discourse, then I am better prepared as a board member to go up to Austin with recommendations from my community. And though their voices aren't directly being heard, I'm speaking, their voices are being heard through me because I am coming to the conversation with what I'm hearing from my community. And I can tell you right now, like now more than ever, I mean, every legislative session is an attack on public education, but this last legislative session was, it was horrific. Like I can't even articulate a word to describe how bad it was. For funding, for curriculum, just across the board, it was really terrible. And so now more than ever, we need individuals to speak out about what they want to see our children learning in schools. Because I guarantee you, if we continue to hear from the same people over and over again, our histories are getting whitewashed. Our students are not being prepared with the tools necessary to make responsible decisions about their health. We see it over and over again. You see students' identities being neglected and minimized. So it's heartbreaking. So reach out to me. I'll put my information out there for everybody. Everybody knows how to get a hold of me because I need as many people helping in this fight as possible.
Now, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to save a lot of the community questions till later, but I think one from Mr. Jason Mims, we all know is a great community leader. He has some very important question because you have something happening right now with respect to social studies. The question is, do parents and community members have access to see what questions are on the STAR? And then what are questions on the social studies end of the course exam or like for US history? And then maybe you could also talk about how germane this is when you talk about social studies and now with the State Board of Education curriculum development.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Mr. Mims and I have had the pleasure of knowing you for quite some time too, and very humbled. So the question regarding STAR question, so it's kind of a two-pieced question. So the State Board of Education doesn't have any authority over the STAR exam. We don't review it. We don't, look at the questions or anything like that. That said, though, STAR exam is very closely held to the chest by by the powers that be. So those questions are never released ahead of time. Like, we don't know what those questions look like. We only know that they're guided through the TEKS that are required to be taught in schools. So our including statements in our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills for those who are educators, those are examples of what will be tested. We just don't know in what way they will be tested, or how the questions will come. So no, parents don't really have, I mean, there are, practice benchmark tests that schools have, and they give to students, but even then, it's just very difficult to know what to expect on the STAR exam, unless you're just looking solely at the general Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. But I will say that those TEKS do guide the questions that are developed. So it's important for our educators to understand how to teach the TEKS in the classroom so that students are getting everything they need to prepare for the test. But herein lies the issue, right? Especially with our social studies standards right now, we're going through, our social studies standards are probably the longest set of standards across all our core content areas. So this means that they have teachers have a lot to teach and students have a lot to learn in this single content area. And because of how heavy it is, typically the teaching to the test happens with social studies, because our teachers don't have the flexibility to go in depth with what truly should be taught, and that's our history and those sorts of things. That's a conversation that I can have for days, and I don't want to take up all the space, but I hope that answers some of the question.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the TEKS are developed by you all, the Texas State Board of Education members, correct?
They're approved through us. They're developed by our stakeholder committee groups.
Okay.
So the individuals who are volunteering their time to come and review the courses, they're the ones that set the standards. The State Board of Education reviews and approves them.
So in the instance of African American Studies, like I said, everyone on this panel was a part of that committee, those committees and ad hoc committees. How can people become a part of those committees? I know there's a social studies revision group assembling all over the state.
There is, and as you all continue the conversation, I will drop the link in the chat so that people know where and how to register to become a panel reviewer.
Okay, and then also, Mr. Mims, I believe if there's, like when Marisa was talking about benchmarks, there's release tests of previous years so that, students can practice and everything like that. But as far as preemptively knowing the questions, that is only privy to, and I believe people from out of state, right? Like ETS employ people from out of state to write those questions.
ETS is a company by itself, right? And then, so here's the issue. It doesn't matter if we have the test, and it doesn't matter if we have the TEKS, because these companies, ETS, in 1915, Black psychologists went to the American Psychological Association and said that if you create these types of tests, it would harm the education of communities of color. They didn't care. They created them anyway. And what we know is that these tests, using really high level statistics, they can guess within a range of error how well the average Black student would do on these tests, how well the average Latino or Latina would do on these tests, regardless of their background. And the achievement, what we call the achievement gap, is really a manufactured statistical gap. And the American Psychological Association in October of 2021, just last year, admitted that they manufactured this gap through statistical maneuvers, I'll put it that way. And that these statistical maneuvers, they knew ahead of time, would disadvantage or make it look like people of color were less intelligent than whites. And they've known this since 1850. So
they issue an apology, right? A written apology.
They issued an apology letter. We didn't accept it. No one accepted it, but they issue one anyway. Please go online and read it. But they basically admitted that much of the racism and racist policies that we have in education was funded by conservative groups and by the Klan. And then the research was conducted by faculty members, white faculty members from around the country. And they used this false research to try to prove that people of color were inferior and that they deserved a type of schooling that matched their inferiority. Yeah, so we're playing a game here with these for-profit companies. And their for-profit is to create the crises that our kids can't learn.
Because
so-
they do the test, intervention and mediation programs as well.
They have the test. They're determining now who becomes a teacher. They're determining the curriculum that teachers need to use. And they're tied to, these same companies are tied to the curriculum that teachers give students in the classroom, and they're tied to the textbooks. So if I can control the textbooks in the teaching and who becomes teachers, I can help manipulate the gap of the results.
And then I can sell the treatment.
Yeah, you can camouflage that there's actually there's a gap that actually does not exist.
Mm.
But here's this: we've known this now. Black psychologists told them this in 1915.
Wow. Okay, and so
I'm gonna pause here, but
no problem.
there was a great debate a few years ago in the state of Texas, but really in several states, with researchers claiming that the test items, the items on test, the questions on test, were 70% resistant to teachers teaching. In other words, the average kid would score the exact same on the test, regardless of how they were taught. The ETS came in and they were like, well, you're incorrect. It's not 70%. Our tests are 50% resistant to teaching. It's a hoax. Our kids can learn. That's all I'm saying.
Right. And so that would lead us to definitely a discussion on eugenics and the bell curve. Yeah, the bell curve argument. And we definitely need to explore that one day. But Dr. James, I want to throw this next question at you because there is a misnomer that us university professors are ivory tower folks, that we're completely disconnected and disengaged within the community. What are some ways that, I know, you've done a lot of initiatives. What are some ways that we're able to dispel that? But more particularly, let's focus on like the critical race theory situation, because we do see this complete, I would say, misinformation propagated everywhere. And so, and professors, we know about critical race theory. Some of us have written about it. I think we're doing a piece coming out on Black father absenteeism, the hoax of that and the misnomer of that. But talk about how professors, what role professors and university members can play in building that community relations and talking about addressing these misnomers that are ubiquitous in the society.
Right. So I shared with everyone in the chat a link to a document. Let's start with critical race theory. And let me say the role of part of what professors can do is to add perspective, because part of our job is to understand the history, the research, etc. Right? We have to know when everyone has to stay kind of in their lane of expertise, right? So, but professors can do that, but y'all have to realize that by and large, the academy is the key source of racism in America. So just because someone's a professor and just because they have a title in their name somewhere does not mean that they know what they're talking about for our communities. This is important. This is very, very important. I've been in higher ed now for 23 years, and I've encountered racism every single day of my existence on a campus. So be cautious. Just don't look beyond their PhD or their EDD or master's and look at the type of work they do and look at the type of relationships that they have with people of color. If they don't relate to people of color, if nobody know them, then you might not want to listen to them. Okay. Critical race theory. one of the things that's been happening throughout our country has been this systematic attack on critical race theory. But what's happening is it's actually not an attack on critical race theory because they don't know what critical race theory is. Critical race theory just sounds really bad. And so they used it to galvanize fear, particularly among white conservative and white suburban moms. White suburban moms, they lost in the last election like no other president in history. And they needed to find a way to recapture their enthusiasm. And so they found this dude named Rufo he had just lost an election. He was a former Trump administrator and wanted to find a way to get back into politics because he lost in Seattle. He sat around and came up with this idea that critical race theory was the evil thing in America, and that critical race theory, if he can make it the boogeyman, will make him a political mover and shaker again. And he was correct. Because if you say multiculturalism, people are going to say, oh, that doesn't sound too bad. If you say race and ethnic relations, people say, oh, that's not too bad. If you say intercultural studies, that's not bad. Critical race theory, man, that don't sound right. Right? But critical race theory, it came in the 1980s to America by law professors. And what they were finding was that the US laws, something was wrong with it. No matter what we did, Emancipation Proclamation, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, Plessy versus Ferguson, the New Deal, the civil rights laws of the 50s and the 60s, the Early Childhood Education Acts and then even Title I that created all this extra money to give to poor students, none of that ended racism. And so the law professors sat around and said, why isn't this working? And what they determined, racism was at the core of why American legal systems were not working. So they invented something called critical race theory to be critical of racism and how it affected how our legal system was working. They made great arguments. Some professors in education picked up those arguments, Lancet, Billings, and Tate in 1994. Since then, 1,700 articles have been published using critical race theory in education. And what critical race theory has done, it has exposed racism in education so that we can end it. That is the purpose of critical race theory. It was a theory created by Black, Latin, Native, and Asian faculty members for our communities. Critical race theory has nothing to do with white people. It is a theory that has helped us find the research to fight for justice for our children by exposing racism in the education and legal systems. It consists of 5 techniques that researchers use. I published over 20 articles using critical race theory, right? But I want y'all to think of y'all driving around and you get a light on your dashboard in your car. What do? You just ignore it? No, you pull over and then you check it out. It may be a gas cap that needs to be tightened. It may be some air that needs to be put into a tire. Critical race theory works the same way. It gives us 5 sets of techniques that when we go into a school, if we find one of these 5 things present, it lets us know that we need to take action, right? So they're claiming that critical race theory is taught in schools. Listen, y'all, I'm a critical race specialist. It is so complex. We don't teach it to undergraduates. We don't teach it to barely any master's students. We don't train teachers in it because it's too complex. We typically only train PhD or EDD students in it if they're doing a research study on race that involves race, right? Because they learn hundreds of theories to do their PhD or master's. But if they're focusing on race, critical race theory is one of the theories that they can use. It gives you 5 techniques. Counter storytelling, perhaps the most important one. It says that our stories matter. If we want to end racism, you have to listen to people of color. Because before critical race theory came along, Black people in higher ed couldn't do research on Black communities. They called it Black on Black research. Critical race theory came along and said, no, we need to do counter storytelling. You all are telling people this master narrative, and that master narrative is not healthy for our people. So we're going to counter storytell. We're going to tell another story. Critical race theory is critical because it tells our stories. It critiques liberalism. It says that racism cannot be overcome by liberal ideas and liberal policies. If it was the case, we had the best shot to overcome all racism when Obama was elected. It barely made a hiccup, y'all. And he tried, but it barely made a hiccup. Biden administration, liberal, barely made a hiccup on racism. It's actually gotten worse. So critical race theory says, why is that happening? Why is liberal policy not enough? Whiteness is property says that being white in America it gives you a set of privileges that you don't even have to work for. Education is one of them. You go to school, the curriculum looks like you, it talks like you, it walks like you, it represents you. It's the greatest advantage that white children have. The second greatest advantage is that 85% of teachers are white. They got built-in role models every day. Their culture is represented every day within schools. Whiteness is property. Permanence of race says that despite all the amendments that we passed, despite all of the legislation that we passed, technically you all, with the passing of the Emmett Till Act, virtually every form of racism is illegal in America. But it's not going to stop it because racism is permanent. It resists every effort to change. It's like COVID, y'all. We think we got rid of it, then a new variant comes out. Interest convergence says that if we want to solve racism, we have to find something that white people care about and tie our efforts to end racism with that. They care about COVID. Now, all of a sudden, we can talk about healthcare disparities because COVID is affecting them too. Interest convergence is perhaps the best strategy that we have to end racism. You find the policies and procedures of a school district, and then you find when their activities are misaligned with their own policies. Interest convergence says legally they have to uphold their own policies. We're going to call you on that. I do it every day and twice on Sunday at the university. Every day and twice on Sunday. I look for 2 ways to do it on Sunday. So critical race theory is not something, it's not the boogeyman. It is one of our secret weapons to make this country better. And we have to know that. So when they're talking about this is indoctrinating our children, yes, Black children, Latinx children, they need critical race theory. If it's bad for white children, just, we're already segregated. Don't teach it to your kids. But when my kids come home, they hear critical race theory. Why? Because then when we read these textbooks, AP World History eliminated the concept of the transatlantic slave trade. They just call it the Atlantic trade. It said that goods and service goods went from America to Europe. In return, immigrants came to America to farm tobacco, rice, and cotton. I kid you not. I read that last year in my son's AP World History book. He said, Dad, what the heck is this? I was like, I don't know what this is. I said, wait a minute. They're talking about the transatlantic slave trade. These people were not immigrants. They were not workers. They were enslaved. And so we need critical race theory just to tell the counter story to properly parent our children. Critical race theory is not made to understand the experience of white Americans. It's not for them. It's for us. I'm going to stop there because I can talk all day about it.
Absolutely. No, I know. And it's a hot button issue. And I know it.
I get emotional about it, man. I'm getting frustrated.
We're probably going to have to bring you back just to do a CRT panel. But thank you so much for that breakdown. And I know just for research sake, if you have discipline issues and you notice your disaggregated data, your Black boys have been disciplined more, you'll use critical race theory to find is it race. Is that the reason why the teacher is sending the Black boys out more than any other race? Okay.
Let me say this last thing. There's a reason why they're attacking critical race theory, because it has exposed the systems of our country for the contradictions that they are. I'm gonna stop there.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna wet the palate for the podcast, right? Because we definitely need to do it. Okay, so Ms. Jones, and thank you again, Dr. James, for that. Ms. Jones, can you talk about San Antonio Spurs and sports and entertainment have been, we're going to pivot a little bit. San Antonio Spurs and sports and entertainment have been quite active within the greater San Antonio community. Can you talk about some of the partnerships that you all and initiatives that you all have within the community and how that relates to community relations with schools?
Of course, of course. Well, if you've been watching the Spurs closely, you'll know that addressing equity and justice has been a part of our DNA since the beginning of time. If you've heard our head coach speak out publicly on a variety of different things, you know, we're not afraid to shy away from certain topics. But we saw an interesting pivot right across our country after the murder of George Floyd. I remember even calling you, Dr. Scott, just feeling lost and confused, like what more do we need to do? What else can we do to address what's going on? At the same time, you saw a lot of organizations, what I would like to say, entering the chat around racial inequity. Companies that you've seen have never touched DEI topics before are now having an opinion or saying that they stand by it or that they're doing things differently in their organization. And so for us, instead of putting out a public statement, we decided to launch a series called Spurs Voices. And it was a series of our employees sharing their experience around discrimination, racism, the change that they want to see. Something we've never done before, because if you've seen our social media, it's usually around our players and things that are going on in the community. But to be able to have that platform for our employees to be able to vocalize and to share. And after listening to everyone's stories, a lot of our leaders in our organizations realized that, hey, maybe I don't quite understand, or I know, or I thought I knew how problematic this is, but did I actually truly know what was going on? And so we decided to look at what would it be if we actually invested in collective impact, meaning we know that there are companies across the city that are doing a variety of different things to address equity and justice. But what would it look like if we did that work together? Instead of working in our own silos, we actually come together to be able to address these issues. And so our CEO called on his peers from HEB, USAA, New Star Energy, SAWS, Rackspace, Toyota, and said, hey, you know, how do we meet each other where we're at and be able to collectively advance racial equity across our city? But we realized that we're not experts in this space, right? Especially Spurs Sports Entertainment. We are a sports and entertainment organization. So really understanding where was our lane and our place in this fight. And so we decided to call on the experts, right? It wasn't for us to come together to figure out how do we do something new. It was more so about coming together to figure out how do we amplify those that are already steeped in social justice work, to where if we lended an extra hand or resources, what could that look like? And so we called on folks like Dr. Scott and the Honorable Marissa Perez-Diaz and many other experts locally and nationally. And we had conversations around, hey, where can we focus our collective efforts to make a difference? And while there are a lot of different areas that has disparities, the groups decided to lean on equitable education, safety and justice, and economic opportunity, and being able to really create some strategic initiatives to figure out, again, how can we address those three areas if we did this work together. But before we even did any of that, it was really important that the leaders of these groups understood the root causes of racism and racial inequities. It wasn't about, oh, let's write a check and go help X organization or help X nonprofit. But it was more so around, hey, what does this look like in our own organizations? How could we potentially be perpetuating the cycle? What do we need to do to get our own house in order, as well as at the same time supporting our community? And so over the next 3 to 5 years, we're investing right under 14 million to be able to move the needle in those areas. And so we're thinking about, again, what does school community relationships look like? How can organizations recognize, one, where their lane is, right? So again, for us, it was sports and entertainment, but then going to the community, having conversations with them, asking them, what problems are we looking to solve? What are the needs? And then utilizing the resources, the platforms, our talent, our treasure, to be able to make a difference and make an impact. And so those are some of the things that we've been up to at the Spurs, and encouraging more organizations to join in with us, because again, we are stronger together than what we can do in our separate silos.
Right, thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you so much. All right, now this is our last question. We're going to open this up to all panelists. Again, we definitely thank you all for being here. And so leaders, moving forward, right? What can other leaders do to guide their communities and organizations to be more engaged with their neighborhood schools and their school leaders and all stakeholders working collegially and collaboratively for the progression of the community? We'll start with you, Dr. Fields.
I think that there's a host of things that a list in terms of K through 12. We could ask parents again to come in and sit on the district site-based, the campus site-based meetings, to get involved with the development of curriculum and instruction throughout the district, as Marissa was talking about earlier. We could have them serve on the SHAC committee that speaks to social issues and how we teach certain issues in our district. They can even just show up at the board meetings and give input to our board members and our superintendent as we develop, how we're going to bring them in. But definitely, I know I'm harping on it, but we got to get back to them coming in and having those conversations with the campus personnel so we can move forward in a collaborative manner and not, getting on social media or trying to, handle it in another way. We really have to have those. We have to develop relationships again that we had prior to this separation with COVID. I'm going to go ahead and stop there.
Phil, thank you for bringing that very important distinction post-COVID, right? Subsequent to COVID, there was a huge chasm, and that you're doing a lot of catch up to bring everybody back, a lot of unifying to catch up.
Correct. That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr.
Yes,
Fields.
sir.
All right, and Dr. James?
Well, I think I want to echo what both Morgan and Dr. Fields said. These are incredibly important points. For me, because of the research that I know, I specialize on Black males, studying Black men. And I believe that mentoring is critical. The research tells us it's critical. For every Black male mentor that a young Black kid has, their graduation rates goes up and their college graduation rates goes up. We got to get more Black and brown men into schools. As a father of three, I used to do Watchdogs, right? Which is a program that brings men in. The 100 can come up with something like that, where men can just come in for a day and just help teachers. And it's a great program. So there's some things we can do. I think the other part really is really what Morgan was talking about, just partnerships, right? When we're dealing with big problems, we can't take the American approach, me, myself, and I. We got to really take our cultural approach, which is communal, us, we, our, and partner together. Because I may have some insight that you need, and you have insight that I need. And if we work together, we can really make some things happen. So I just admonish us to stay in touch and just keep working together, because we do work together. So let's just keep going.
Thank you, Dr. James. Forgive the colloquialisms, but the 100 Black Men in San Antonio are dope because they are in the schools and they're active. I know Dr. Fields is part of an organization. I don't want to give any deference to any particular Greek organizations, but they are absolutely in the schools. So definitely forgive the colloquialism, but they are dope and they are absolutely everywhere in the schools. All right, we're going to turn to you, Ms. Jones.
I would say there's two things that need to happen or continue to happen. The first thing is around including youth voice. A couple of years ago, I did a program with Sam Houston High School where we talked about different social justice issues that were important to them. And then we worked on solutions and invited individuals that needed to hear their stories. And I remember at first they were not trying to do it. And the reason why is because they said, well, Miss, no one cares what we have to say. And I will never forget that. It broke my heart the day that I heard that. And so thinking about in order for us to have this relationship, for us to move forward and bring the vision to life, that has to include youth voice. They have to have a seat at the table. And the second thing is, to that point, is making sure that we're looking at the table and being conscious of who's not there, and making sure that they are invited there. Or we build another table, we build multiple tables, whatever we need to do, making sure that we have those diverse perspectives that are represented. Because even if, let's say, we take the Black community, we can't generalize and say that every experience in the Black community is the same. It is not. So what are the ways that we can diversify to make sure that we're addressing unique experiences and unique needs to be able to move forward together?
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Jones. And last but not least, the Honorable Marisa Pettis.
Thank you. So I will echo the student voice sentiment. That was actually one of my pieces. We learn a lot from our youth, and so ditto to that for sure. I think from a policy perspective, what policy leaders need to do is ask questions and listen. Many times what happens is policymakers think they know the community well and have solutions that they bring to the community, and that never works. We need to understand what solutions community wants and what they're coming up with, and then we can work with them through policy to create those solutions, using our lens from a policy perspective. But where I've seen policy really make mistakes, right? We really lose sight of what we're trying to accomplish is when we don't include community in the decision making. And many times, and I'll say this, it's very specific to school community, right? Oftentimes policy happens to educators, to school system employees without them, right? So we do things to them through policy. There are unintended consequences. Sometimes there are intended consequences. And because our school system leaders, our school system employees are not part of the conversation, we don't understand the full ramifications of what we're doing. And that directly impacts how students learn, how students experience education, and then ultimately what that means for their future as they matriculate out of the school system. And so it's really important for us to, as policy leaders, again, ask questions and listen. Don't come with solutions already set in stone. We have to be amenable, we have to be flexible, and we have to be willing to honestly to represent the individuals who have put their trust in us and voted us into these offices, because just as easily as we've, or it doesn't come easily, but just as quickly as we're put in office, we can very quickly be taken out. And that's we have to recognize that it's a privilege to be in this space, and so we have to honor the people who put their trust in us.
Okay, and thank you, the Honorable Marisa Pettis. Now, again, we want to thank the 100 Black Men of San Antonio. We want to thank for just creating this opportunity for dialogue. We also want to thank the African American Network. The African American Network, of course, has that local feel, but global reach. And so we want to thank them as well, because they're amplifying the voices of our esteemed guests. We want to thank Dr. Milton Rob Fields. Of course, we want to thank Morgan Jones. We want to thank Dr. Marlon James, and of course, the Honorable Marisa Pettis Diaz for being our distinguished guest on School and Community Relations. One of my favorite quotes is from Dr. Renee Rochester. You can count the number of seeds in one apple, but you can never count the number of apples in one seed. So we encourage you to get planted, keep planting seeds, keep watering seeds, keep mentoring, keep engaging, keep influencing, keep impacting, but more importantly, get involved. And if you have any questions about how to get involved, definitely contact your local 100 Black Men. We have our Dr. Milton Harris, and I'm gonna turn it over to him, and he'll give you more information on how you can get involved with 100 Black Men, and also a quick survey that you can take. Thank you all so much, and y'all have a wonderful, wonderful night. God bless.
Yeah. What a great session. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. And I'm just realizing that there's no way we can give 1 hour to this conversation. We will not make that mistake again. We should have given you all much more time because there was more I wanted to hear from each one of you. And I promise, if you come back, we will give you a 2-hour session just for you. And we can really get into this and hammer this out. And really, there were some great topics. And again, kudos to all of our panelists. There is a survey in the chat. It's a Coca-Cola survey. It's a quick survey on tonight's discussion, just helping us out. Please take some time to take that survey. We're getting ready to go into our next segment on community policing, but before we do that, I believe our president and chairman of the board, Mr. Ivan Freeman, is on. Sir, would you like to have some words before we go into our session on policing?
Hey, Dr. Harris, thank you very much for the opportunity tonight. I apologize. In between a couple of different, I did have an opportunity, phenomenal discussion that was going on there. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that we need to give these individuals more time and we need to get more people involved in this whole process. It doesn't have to be complex as some people make it out to. And I think it was laid out very, very, very rudimentary to where there's lots of opportunities for more people to get involved in the whole process. And on that note, I will turn it back over to you and get ready for our next session tonight. Thank you very much to all of the panelists tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Dr. Scott, and all of our wonderful, wonderful panelists. We are now at 7:01, and we will transition directly into our next hour where we're having a conversation with the 100 about community policing. And so we have a great lineup this evening on community policing. My name is Milton Harris. I serve as the executive director here with 100 Black Men of San Antonio. Such an honor to be with you this evening. We have a great panel lined up. We have the amazing Catherine Brown, Bexar County Constable, Precinct 4. We have Mr. Scott Ambrose, Vice President of San Antonio Police Officers Association, SAPD. And we also have Mr. Alonzo Harden, President of San Antonio Black Police Officers Coalition, SAPD. And so we're super excited to have you all with us this evening. Let's start with the Honorable Constable Brown. Introduce yourself and let the folks know who you are, what you do here in the great city and county, Bexar County. I believe you're on mute.
There we go. Good evening, everybody. My name is Constable Brown. I am the Northeast, Southeast, and the East side of San Antonio Constable, where I represent the community in terms of dealing with primarily civil matters. We do some law enforcement duties such as traffic and whatnot, but for the most part, we do engage very deeply in the community in terms of handling civil matters. So it's an honor to be here tonight, and I hope that with this dialogue that we can definitely bring some awareness to our community members.
Absolutely. Mr. Ambrose, please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Scott Ambrose. I am a detective with SAPD, been on the department for 15 years. I did 23 years in the Air Force prior to that. I am the vice president, and on behalf of Danny Diaz, who is the president, we've been here for just over a year, and we want to open up these lines of communications. And so this is a great opportunity for us to continue with Danny's goal. And again, I appreciate the invite.
And then last but not least, the great Mr. Hart.
Yeah, good afternoon, and also ditto that. Appreciate the invite. Officer Alonzo Harden, President of San Antonio Black Police Officer and a native of San Antonio. My specific job involves the community policing side, which is called the SAFE unit. There's a lot of topics that we can discuss later this evening, but once again, thank you for the invite, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us tonight on Conversations with the 100. Part of the 100's advocacy here in the community of San Antonio and Bexar County is to establish a bond, a relationship with policing across the community. And so that's one of the reasons that we have these conversations. So as we get into the conversation tonight, talking about community policing and what that means, I'd like each of you to address it from a standpoint as we address our audience. When we talk about policing, the genre of policing is complex. It's as diverse as our communities. We have state, local, federal policing. Can you talk us through some of the differences as it relates to local, state, and federal policing and how that relates to your role as a police officer?
I would say, go ahead, Ambrose. I mean,
You're on mute, Scott.
Okay, now you got me?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say how it relates to my position that I'm in now as the vice president is more of workers' rights and an advocate for the 2,370 officers we have to make sure that a lot of their rights within the department are taken care of. But the second part is actually working with the community, making sure that some of the media that's been out there before, some of the media stories have been kind of, not completely true as to, the depiction of the union and the community. I like the word community because it's unity. For the last year, we want to say we want to be unified with the community. And so that's our second goal is to get with the community. We have a 501(c) called Blue Cares, a nonprofit organization that gives back to the community. And we've been doing it for, I think Blue Cares has been around for 10 years, 15 years. And we just kind of always let the Blue Cares side of it do it. And now we're coupling it closer with sworn officers so the community can see that actually the union does give back to the community. We're also bringing back what we hear from the community and trying to work with the police, the officers, when we talk to them every week at what we call in-service, when they go through a week of training, and all the officers have to go through it. We get with them and we give them feedback on what we hear from the community and say, hey, look, can we try to do this a little bit differently? I don't work from the operational side. Alonzo, as a safe officer, can talk more about the operational side along with the constable on operational.
Great. I'll pick up from there, Scott. Officer Alonzo Harden, federal, all the way down to state. One of the big differences is one of them that I enjoy. I believe on our level of policing, we get a chance to really get involved with the community. And like I said before, I'm part of a SAFE unit, which stands for San Antonio Fear-Free Environment. There is 6 SAFE units, basically a SAFE unit at each substation in our city. Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have 6 substations now. So there is 6 SAFE units, and their primary focus is to get into the community, hear the communities, what they're saying. Some of the things that we do in SAFE is conflict resolution, mediation between neighbors. My specific scope in the SAFE unit is school services. So within District 2 and part of District 3, every day I'm in some school within those 2 districts. And it's expanded from just pre-K or elementary schools all the way through high schools, because as it was said in that first session, it's very important to hear the voices of our youth because that's where you learn a whole lot of things about even what's going on in the community, what's going on in the schools and whatnot. So our SAFE unit is on a mission to inform the community, because what we've been hearing out in the community is, what does SAFE do? So our mission and goal now, coupled with the association and as well as the other Hispanic police association that is part of the umbrella under the overall association, we're collectively coming together to get this word out. What is it that we do in the community? To only have folks think that all we do is arrest people and come at bad times, that's not it. So yeah, again, I'm just enjoying to be a part of this conversation to educate the community as far as what is it that we do as police officers, San Antonio police officers, for the people in our community. Thank you.
and as for me as a precinct 4 constable, we are knee deep in the community. As I stated before, we are nestled right here in the beautiful northeast side of San Antonio. And what I bring to the table in terms of law enforcement on the federal side, I have reserves that are currently with the National Guard, State Guard, And we have partnered up with them to bring in their knowledge base and training, you know, in terms of what they do in the community and whatnot. So we partnered up with the National Guard. I've also partnered up with local sororities and fraternities to get their perspective of law enforcement and have them to couple with us and team with us and help us to better get a better reach and feel of what the community needs are. I've also implemented a law enforcement academy within our agency because we have been a reporting entity for the longest period of time, but unfortunately, the previous constables never really utilized that level of empowerment, if you will, to educate former law enforcement officers and current peace officers, you know, to get local training and whatnot. So I've implemented that. I'm also a prior business owner. So I've been educating the individuals that we serve papers to, that are in the process of losing their business and how to kind of stop the bleeding in terms of resources to help them save their businesses. I've also been a licensed realtor for 15 years. So when I have to serve papers to people who are getting evicted, I already have the resources to provide that to them, because it's not about me just, you know, doing my job in terms of law enforcement, but I also want to, you know, to serve the community as well. I don't want to see everybody, you know, have their stuff drug out on the street and pulled out of their apartments and homes and whatnot. I want to be able to offer them the services that they need, you know, to maybe improve their credit, to, you know, become a home builder one day. Home owner one day, to have resources to go to in terms of shelters if they do get put out of their apartment due to COVID or an injury on the job. So that's pretty much what I bring to the table on a local level. And again, utilizing my officers that are in the federal reach to have them to come in and teach, you know, to bring their skill sets to our department. My most prideful recent accomplishment is allowing my troop, Troy, who's also a former SAPD officer, implement his Walk a Mile in My Shoe program. And what that program does is it actually brings together, you know, the community of law enforcement and the citizens, the constituents, if you will, to teach them what to and what not to do in the event of a traffic stop, what to and what not to say if they are approached by a law enforcement officer. So he is utilizing our agency to report those TICO hours, to give law enforcement officers credit to teach this curriculum, and I'm really, really proud of that.
Outstanding. Thank you all for that. And so there are subtle differences between the constable's office, SAPD, even the Police Officers Association. And so from the Police Officers Association perspective, talk more about the role of the association and bridging gaps in the community versus your role as a on-the-beat police officer and bridging your gap in the community.
Well, being the vice president of the association is all about, like I said, number one, making sure that the workers, our members, are taken care of and not stepped on by the city. You know, the contract, which we are just tentatively have a tentative agreement with the city on a new contract, as you've seen, where we address a lot of the discipline and accountability in chapters 28, 29. But so our job is to make sure that they have insurance, they have wages, they have healthcare, they have good working hours, they have, you know, safe cars to drive. But then our also goal is to actually work with the community to, like last Saturday, I walked around at the expose they had over there at the YMCA and introduced myself and actually ran into a couple people I have met before, and it was really cool. But it's going out there at that grassroots level and going and walking, you know, through the park and talking and finding out, hey, where is the disconnect? Because it's been so disconnected for so long. So I'm not really saying where's the disconnect, but where can we replug in together and how can we do that? The constable talked about that Walk a Mile in My Shoes, and that's a great 8-hour class. I went through it, and Troy likes to keep it to 1 first responder to 4 to 10 community citizens. And that way, both sides can hear each other. It's not just how we maybe can advise them maybe how to do a traffic stop a little bit safer to put both themselves and the officer in a little bit safer area, but it's also for us to listen to what the citizens do, you know, how they feel about that. How one of the first questions they says is, do you trust police officers? And everybody has a clicker, and the statistics or everybody that answered, it was a very high. And I was like, oh, you know, this is going to be an uncomfortable 8 hours maybe. But it's not, because if you have honest, if you go there with an open heart and want to do best for the community by listening and then taking it back, you got to take it back and tell the officers too. You just can't listen. You got to take it back to the members and talk to the members too. And so that's our second part is taking it back, striving to get the patrolman to say, hey, look, these are the few things. The officers, I mean, the citizens like you. 75% last year in a survey said they like how, you know, SAPD is responding and handling their calls. But what can we do to make it better? What can we do to work through an incident where the media maybe showed 10 seconds of a clip and there's the rest of it? Or why did somebody come back through arbitration? Let's talk about the rest of the story as to why the independent arbitrator brought a person that didn't commit a crime, an officer, and said, okay, maybe the city punishment for the violation was too much, and let's give them the appropriate punishment. So let's work through that also. We're working through those things so the citizens can understand that we're not protecting criminals. If you have continual behavioral characteristic flaws, we don't want you on the department either, but we also believe in escalation of punishment, you know, the ladder of punishment that meets the violation. So if you continue to have character flaws, you should get more punishment until you can no longer be an effective officer on the department. We ask to protect the process. We're not protecting what that individual did. And we're not protecting criminals, that for sure. But we're just protecting the process of make sure that the punishment equals the violation.
Officer Harden, you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I do. I mean, what better way or to have a great opportunity to engage in the community just on our level, on the patrol level. Again, what is known as SAFE. What I like to talk about are some of the things that we do in the SAFE unit. For one of the ways that we engage our youth is through our PSC, which is Public Safety Corps. And this starts out at the age of 14 and it goes all the way through age 20. Because to become a police officer, at least through our academy, you have to be 20 years old in 6 months. So upon completion, you will be 21. But what's important about it is from the age of 14 throughout those years, our youth are given an opportunity in a very controlled environment to come and experience what it's like to be a police officer. We teach them effective communication, physical fitness, de-escalation skills, all the things that police officers see, and again, in a very controlled environment. And then one of the just positive reinforcements about just that one program is that we take these kids and we go to different police departments throughout the state of Texas and allow them to compete and demonstrate the skills and the knowledge that they have learned from working with these officers once a week on Tuesdays from about 5 p.m. to 7. Another thing is our Success Through Respect program. And that teaches very similar using a traffic stop or other different scenarios that are embedded in the curriculum. But we teach that respect goes both ways. That just because you wear a badge that, you know, you don't get respect unless you give respect. And so that's a wonderful way to also engage and get the kids to interact, whether they're being police officers or whether they're being the bad guy or the bad girl. It's just another way for us to engage our youth and teachers and staff. The laundry list is long. I can end it with PAL. We work very closely with the YMCAs through our Police Athletic League, summer leagues. We work with the YMCA, with the Cal Ripken. These are officers that are coming out, spending their time teaching these kids not just baseball, but the importance of sportsmanship, the importance of leadership as a team member, and how it applies not only to that athletic arena, but in the home, in the school. So we take that time to teach them, as well as, encourage their athleticism in whatever sport it is that they do. So I'm really excited about it. And I'll end with this. Just last Friday, we were at Idea Harvey Najim on WW White. We played the coaching staff. We had some of our SAPD's finest basketball players come out and engage with the youth. The basketball game was great, but what better opportunity it was for us that were walking around as police officers not playing. We're talking to the kids. We're having those uncomfortable conversations. They can see the human in us, not just the horror in us, whether that is pumped to them through social media and the like. But having that one-on-one close-up FaceTime with our youth, with our teachers, with family that do attend to several different things that we do, it's just awesome. And I'm starting to hear quite often, man, I didn't know y'all did all that. I didn't know y'all did that. And that lets me know that we're going in the right direction. And so that effort and that momentum will continually be on the forefront. Thank you.
Yeah, that's commendable stuff. The question I have is, you're right. The community as a whole has no idea that you all do all of that. We get a lot of the horror stories, like Mr. Ambrose was talking about earlier. What we get from social media and the media is when something tragic occurs, and then of course the media is going to highlight it, and it can be some pretty upsetting stuff. And so as a department, you have to deal with that when all you get is the bad. And so how as a community do we get a better inside tip on a lot of the great work in the community involvement that's happening in policing?
I will have to say that social media has been my best tool to showcase what we're doing, how we're trying to improve the agency, what we have to offer in terms of resources. And for me, it's been really, really great because I opened the very first food pantry within the community because I deal with evictions and child case custody issues, divorces, and things of that nature. So when my deputies are dispatched to go and serve these papers, and again, they see a disconnected family or kids walking around with, tethered clothes, if you will, we have those resources in my pantry for the officers to outfit those families. Or I've even had officers even bring them back. They put them in the back of the patrol car, brought them here to the agency, and pretty much let these people, some of the immigrants and different people in the neighborhood, shop in the pantry, to get these resources. So it's about utilizing different platforms to get your message out there, and local outfits like TAN TV, if you will, to showcase what we're doing and what we're going to continue to do, and how to get engaged.
Yeah. I can agree with that. Constable, you're in the media for sure, especially on social media and in a very positive light. That highlights some of the differences though between constables and SAPD. Of course, the Constable Corps, if I'm correct, is not as large. It doesn't engage with the public as much and as often as SAPD. So naturally, there's going to be some, if something goes down, most likely it's going to be SAPD that responds as opposed to the Constable Corps.
That is correct. Our jurisdictions pretty much overlap each other's too.
And what are some of those overlapping responsibilities?
So we have, say for instance, the park. I have Bonning Lake and I also have Calaveras Lake in my jurisdiction. Although we respond out there, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Calaveras Lake is also your jurisdiction, right? Harding and Ambrose?
Calaveras Lake?
Calaveras Lake is also your jurisdiction, correct?
Yes, it is. It's a little far, south and some of east. Yeah.
So even though it's in my precinct, we do respond, but it's also SAPD territory. So we kind of share some responsibilities in that respect.
Dr. Harris, if I may, you mentioned the what can the community do? I would encourage that all those that are involved, whether 501(c) or you're involved in the community, one way is to not always look for the wrong, but look for the good. And what exactly, whether the constable's office, park police, SAPD is doing out in the community. Because again, just the very relationship that was birthed with even TAN TV and the San Antonio Black Police Officers Coalition, it's just from getting out there and engaging and making those connections. And then all of a sudden, you're able to see and share visions of hope and experiences to really do something in the community. Personally, it upsets me when all I see is the negative publicity about the East Side, when I know I work the East Side and I see so much beauty, I see so much passion. But then again, you know, as James Baldwin said, you know, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do, you know, and, you know, we got to continue to do something in those partnerships. And I think it was Ms. Jones that said it earlier. It doesn't always have to be about a check coming to the organization. What it can be is just coming in, locking up, sharing the ideas and the dreams of moving forward and not focusing on the negative. You know, come out and see what we're doing. The gospel outreach. My gosh, my brain is freezing right now, but there is so much. Last year, right after COVID, no, prior to COVID, give you another example of what we've done. We partnered with, our SAFE unit partnered with a group called Fin Addicts. At certain times of the year, the Southside Lions Park replenishes or restocks the fish. We took about 30 kids with police officers, with this organization, Fin Addicts, who came to us and said, hey, how can we do something positive? We took these kids fishing, and some of those kids have never even touched a fishing pole, you know, but again, it gives them that opportunity to engage the police, have those conversations with those police women and policemen. So to your question specifically, I would encourage community members, community organizations that are out here, let's stop, you know, whatever is done in the dark will come in the light. Okay, all that negative and everything like that, if it's going to come out, you know, we'll address it as accordingly. But let's get on with the positive. Let's show that, you know, there is greatness, there is hope, there is, you know, my gosh, there is promise over here, specifically to the East Side. I'm passionate about it. So with all of us together, moving in the same direction, and there's going to be bumps and bruises, but shake it off and keep moving forward. Because if we focus on what happened yesterday, we'll be too busy. So to the community members that are out there that are listening, hey, let's really lock up and do this thing. Let's come together and move forward and put our minds together and always show positive. Show the positive. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Officer Harden, and you know, I think it's easier than said, and I think our media and our social media plays a big role in that, because oftentimes what's highlighted is the negative, and especially when something tragic occurs, and then as nonprofits, especially if you're into advocacy, you feel you have a duty to kind of advocate, you know, on some people's behalf in certain cases, and I know in our perspective, it's not, as an organization, we don't want to harp on the negative, but we do feel we have a duty to lend our voice in certain circumstances. And in the same way, we feel we have a duty to lend our voice to community policing when there's greatness there, to the things that the constable's doing, to the things that the Police Officers Association is doing. And that's why events like this is so important, so we gain insight on what's going on, so we can lend our voice and try to highlight that. Now, one of the attendees tonight, Mr. Jason Mims, shout out to Jason. He's a great individual doing some great work with the Mims Institute. Many of you might know him. He put in the chat that perhaps youth can be paid as a social media intern to highlight positive engagements between law enforcement and youth. That's an interesting concept. Part of the work that we do here at the 100 is job development, and so that's actually an interesting concept that we can have some conversations on. What do you guys think about that?
I think that would be great, especially as an intern, because, and I would be more than welcome. Is he local?
He is.
Yes, he is?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe he can, stop by and we can have a chat, because I'm doing it all myself. And if that's something that's a passion of his, I would be more than happy to work with him and have him see what we're doing and come and meet the officers and learn our operation. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Mr. Mims, feel free to come off of mute and weigh in.
Thank you, Dr. Harris and TAN TV for putting this on and 100 Black Men. But I think that as we try to build these relationships between law enforcement and our youth, the way that makes sense to me is to engage youth in putting the word out there. And I know that we have youth that use social media and it's spread all over the place. They're able to reach other people. And so you just take that and you say, well, why don't we just have them post, for example, on social media once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, engagements that are positive between law enforcement and community members. And I tell you, when we look under the rocks, we'll find, but you got to look under the rocks. And sometimes it's more important from my point of view that students feel like there's an incentive in it for them. So, talking to young people and telling them how to be leaders, et cetera, is all fine and good. And I appreciate that. And I love those engagements. But then you pull some young person aside and said, why don't you post what we're doing in SAFE or through the camps? Why don't you just post that out there so other people can see it?
It gives them a buy-in, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's then, and watch and see where it blossoms out to,
Good suggestion. I like it.
We'll definitely have to do some follow-up on that, Mr. Mims, and with Alonzo and TAN TV and the Constable. We're already working on an initiative that was started last year with Alonzo and TAN TV with Work is the New Hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the work that we're doing here at the 100 Black Men, one of our initiatives in workforce development is we're launching CyberBill, an IT workforce development pre-apprenticeship entry level, working to get young folks certifications to get entry level positions into IT careers. And I know that a great friend of Mr. Mims and a member of the 100 Black Men, Anthony Gordon, Jason and Anthony is working on the quantum computing initiatives with young folks over on the east side, and I believe out of Sam Houston High School. So there might be some space here for collaboration to try to get something like this going long term. If we can put something together and all these great minds that are on here and make something like that happen. Because I know that there are a lot of great things since I've met Alonzo, since I've met the Constable and other officers. I know that there's a lot of great things going on across policing in the city of San Antonio. And we do have one of the better policing forces, combined policing forces of major large cities in the nation. And so that might be a good way to kind of put some things out there so you can put it out there, and then they can get some internship experience and work experience in that field. So any comments on additional comments on that?
No, I love it.
Go ahead, Alonzo.
No, I'm just saying I love it. Hey, Mr. Mims, I think I met you at the Sam Houston. Yeah, how you doing? Good to see you again. Oh, that was great.
Yeah, and I think, you know, even that little engagement, you know, if we had some of those young folks that were leading that session, if you said, okay, you take some of those answers and put them out there, okay? Some of the questions and some of the answers, and just put them out there on social media. You give one of them a chance to do that, and you just say it's a flat rate fee, okay, that we're gonna pay you for doing that little project. But all across the board, we have these little projects, and you could say, okay, we'll find this young person, and so yeah, I'm encouraged by the conversations I see going on. I was trying to put in the chat a recent law enforcement black male encounter that was positive, that was posted on Facebook by my cousin, and I'm gonna try to see if I can't post it in there to the chat. But anyway, there's all kinds of positive encounters. And as Dr. Harris says, well, you know, people don't know about them because, you know, we just kind of do it and keep on going. And we realize that by getting the word out, that's a way for us to understand that people have the same concerns as everybody else.
I have to say that I totally agree with you, Mr. Bims. And when I was a recruiter at the sheriff's office, where I served for 19 years, because I listened to the youth, he happened to be a Bexar County Sheriff Deputy, now SAPD officer. His name is Alexander Mena. Alexander Mena loved to do videos in uniform for the ladies. And he asked me one day, he said, Sarge, how do you think about me posting this to get more female applicants? And at first I was like, I don't know, it's a little suggestive, a little risky. But I listened to him. And do you know, we're the ones who started that whole law enforcement engagement of showing a positive light in officers just having a good time, lip syncing to music, and showing a human side to our career field. That's how I got started, right here. So I totally agree, just listening to the youth, giving them a buy-in, and letting them have a say in terms of how law enforcement engage with the public, or what we can better do to bring awareness to a more human aspect of our career field.
Yeah, phenomenal. And before I lose this thought, with our workforce development program, we have cohorts of young people. On Friday is Leadership Development Day. And that's a day where we invite employers in to talk about various careers. What age is it to become a constable or SAPD, and is college required or high school diploma?
So with the sheriff's office is 18 years of age, because of course they can work in the jail. But as Mr. Alonzo said, it's 20 years and 6 months or 5 months for SAPD.
Six. And that's primarily because our academy is 8 months long. So upon completion of the academy, you will be 21 years of age. All you do need is a high school diploma or even a GED. And one of the unique things about our department is our academy is not only paid, it's accredited. So many people come without any college. They come without any college. And because of the partnerships that the association and other past chiefs have made with some of the local universities, those 18 hours that you leave our academy with, you can go somewhere like Wayland Baptist, and they'll transfer your credited hours towards your degree. So it kind of gives you a jump start to complete your degree. But basically, all you need is a high school diploma, be 21 years old upon graduation, go to our academy for 8 months, maintain, what is it, Scott? Is it 80% grade average?
It's pretty high. It's at least 80. I thought it was 85, but it might be 80.
Yeah. And that's every day, 7 to, I think a day would basically look like 7 to 5, Monday through Friday, weekends off, but you're going to be totally engrossed in studies because throughout that academy process, you're going to be learning family law, city ordinances, traffic codes. And so it's a pretty extensive course. We do have officers on our department that went through other avenues of seeking employment through ACOG. They can go to there and basically get their TCLOS license, but they still have to come to our academy if they are seeking employment with the San Antonio Police Department.
And I wanted to tell Scott, can you hear me, Ambrose? I'm sorry to
I was gonna touch. We know each other, and I was gonna touch on a little bit more training once you get your point out there, Constable.
Yeah. So, Mr. Ambrose is former security forces, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So there's also a curriculum with security forces where they have to do a modified academy if they served in the military and graduated from tech school as a military police officer or security forces officer, where they can just get their peace officer license sooner than everybody else. I just wanted to add that part too.
Some of the training, yeah, it's shortened in the field training officer portion there, Constable. But there's only one person that hasn't gone through the full 7-8 months of the academy, and that's just one person. To become an SAPD officer, you have a year's worth of training you're required to go through, and that is the 8 months of the academy. And then you have a field training officer that you ride with. You ride with several of them for the next several months. So you're not even an individual that takes the first call by yourself for at least a year. Some of the other training is de-escalation. We do 40 hours of mental health. We have our training curriculum has changed to be more understanding of today's society with we approach somebody and we say, how would you like to be addressed if they appear to be dressed in a different set of clothing? We want to understand who they are and we want to address them as they are. So that's a lot of the other training that we're doing. Yes, we get trained on a lot of laws and making sure that we can use the minimal amount of force necessary. But a lot of the training now is also centering on being able to identify an individual that's in a car that has low blood sugar. Years ago, we just thought that individual was drunk and we could have possibly taken him into jail for being drunk when we didn't recognize the medical condition or the mental health if you're in a mental health crisis. And so those are a lot of things that the chief has done to make us more aware and to be more aware of the community and to be able to help the community.
And Mr. Harris, if I might add it, you do have to be 21 years of age and have some experience as a law enforcement officer to be a constable.
To be a constable.
And Dr. Harris, I would also like to add, on the community side, upcoming March the 30th, and this varies upon captains, and I think this is important for people in the community to know, especially if you live in District 2 or even District 3. And why I say that is because that's our service area. But we're going to be having a captain's meeting on March the 30th, where we actually invite the community HOA leaders. I think this meeting is going to be specifically designed for the HOA presidents, but you have my contact information. But quite typically, every quarter we have a captain's meeting. I think it's also important for the community to know you can do ride-alongs, you can schedule ride-alongs, you can get involved on Citizens on Patrol, where you go through the academy. I believe it's 6 weeks. You learn things. You can not only ride along with us, You can do the citizens on patrol. And there's another thing that I found out that a lot of people just don't know what they are able to do. We have, Scott, help me with this. We have several different boards, whether it's a advisory action board, a crash board. On a couple of these boards, they have citizens. And a lot of people don't realize that they can go through their city council and ask and request to be on advisory action board. You can
Right,
see.
it's our citizens review board for our discipline, non-criminal discipline board. City council, you have to be vetted through city council, but they have up to 6 citizens along with 6 sworn officers sit on this board. And all non-criminal violations that go through our internal affairs investigation go and is presented in front of the board, and their recommendation it then goes to the chief for one, if they feel that a violation was just and that the individual did the violation, and what punishment should equate to that violation. And that's been, like you said, been going on for years, and a lot of citizens have sat there 6 months and at the end have said, wow, this is really eye-opening. We didn't know that there was this much of a review anytime an officer has a violation of the non-criminal type.
Excellent. Well, I mentioned earlier that we do a workforce development program over at 1104 Denver, just east of downtown. And so in 2021, we trained and educated just over about 60 participants. This year, we're looking to do maybe 75 or so. I would love for you all to come in and because these are young folks that's just starting their careers. And so maybe your recruiting departments, we could do some type of collaboration where the recruiting department comes in and just talk to the young folks about careers in law enforcement. And so you never know, some of them might want to consider that as a career pathway.
Awesome.
That's a great idea. We're pairing up right now with AAOR, Against All Odds Rise, with Embry as the president. In fact, next month, we're going to go down to Texas A&M. We're setting up a student summit down there with AAOR and do exactly what you're talking about, getting engaged with the students down there. I know Mr. Mims had talked about, having social media, and that's a great point for me to bring up at that summit, is to see if somebody does want to do that. We're getting back online with a new marketing company. And so we've been kind of socially media, kind of dark or quiet. But with our new social media company coming up, you're going to see us being more social. And that's a great idea to get somebody, that enjoyed the summit to try to help us out and, plug in from the student side.
Yeah, great conversation tonight. And so as we begin to wrap up, we probably got a little over 10 minutes left in this segment. What are some recommendations from each of you on how to improve relationships within minority communities, within Black and Brown communities? We've talked about some great strategies here tonight, but what are some things that you perhaps are already working on or would like to see in partnership with community organizations or just the community at large that would help improve relationships within communities that identify as people of color?
So me being a mother of 2 Black grown sons, there is no secret that there's been some struggles in terms of racial profiling and whatnot. And yes, my kids were a product of that. And as I stated, during my campaign session, that had I not worked for the department in which profiled my kids, they would have gotten caught up in that paper trail system, if you will. So for me, being a constable, what I do with my troops is I rotate them in their districts. I don't let them get comfortable. Some of them are comfortable in the high end, zip codes. And I've switched that up. I never want them to be complacent or used to just their pigmentation of skin. So me as a constable, I think I've hired the most Black individuals. I just promoted the first Black female officer, Officer Lewis. There's never been a woman to hold rank as a constable besides myself. So I've been doing that to diversify the department, and also to have them as an advocate in the event that they are on the north side and there's an officer on the east side that is in need of just, one of us, if you will, for her to be dispatched, down there to kind of give them some backup. So that's just what I've been doing. And that's some of the things that my kids wish they had coming up and dealing with law enforcement.
Thank you for that.
I have to piggyback on you with that one, Constable, because as you know, my son Malik is a
Yes.
African-American son.
Yes.
And I've had conversations with him. I'm not afraid that when he goes out at night, that he knows what to do, because I had conversations just like I actually tell myself, if I get stopped at night, I do the same thing I tell my son. Find a nice, safe area, well lit, turn the dome light on, and I'll sit there just like this, because the officers react to what is inside the car. And I told Malik, I says, we'll handle it the next day, son, but comply so we can handle it the next day. But I also take back when I go to talking with the community on to remind the officers, hey, yes, you react off of them, but if you tell them, let me see your hands, and then you say, let me see your ID, and they go to reach for their ID, well, you start yelling at them. Well, no, you have to remember, you just told them, let me see your hands, but then let me see your ID. So they have to get it out of their wallet. So you have to remember that also. And I have to agree with you there, Kat. I think our reoccurring training in service and some of the things that the chiefs picked up upon on dealing with minorities I think it has helped. And the constant reminder to the officers, whoever they stop, is a citizen, and that we always have to be safe, but we also have to remember that's an interaction with the citizens that can always go in a positive manner.
What I would like to add, I'll try to be as brief as possible, but it's not just the police problem. And it was said earlier that not only do we need to get a buy-in from the youth, we need to get a buy-in from these parents. Because I'm telling you, when I'm in these schools, you've got school teachers trying to do their best to have a DARE program. Here we come in as San Antonio police officers talking with McGruff, talking about how to be alcohol, tobacco, and drug free. And we do our little spiel and we say our little speeches. And then afterwards, when I do my interaction with the students, it's not uncommon for a young middle schooler to come up to me and say, well, Officer Harden, what do I do about staying drug free if drugs are in my house? So we cannot be afraid to have not just that conversation about the police. It ain't just the police problem. As my chief has said before, and many other leaders have said before, we are not going to be able to arrest the problem away. So it's going to take some involvement, not just solely by the police department to change this rhetoric and conversation and behavior, but it's going to take some buy-in with the youth, community leaders, and the parents. We've got to get the parents involved. I can say I'm old school or whatever. I was always afraid. I remember getting a whooping from the neighbor, and then I would get another whooping from my mama. And then when my daddy came home, because he worked the 311 shift, I got another whooping. There is no accountability for our youth out there. I'm telling you, and for those of you 100 Black men and the Omegas, I think that work, I forget which organization it is that works with the young men over at Young Men's Leadership. Y'all see it. Y'all see it. I know you see it. There's no accountability for parents. I don't know who said it, but getting the parents to come up there and engage, not just to see little Johnny and Sarah, what they're doing, but get engaged with the curriculum. Quit turning our schools into a daycare, and actually get involved about your daughter or son's education and help these teachers and encourage them. Don't get mad at them because they get suspended, but then all of a sudden the police officer shows you videos of kids shooting dice and there go your son, but you mad because they got expelled. How about let's talking about why are you playing dice in school? You know, so I'll say it's an issue that needs to be addressed with the police, but there also, I firmly believe there's got to be accountability on both sides. There got to be buy-in from everybody that's involved, you know, to make a dent, to make a move, to make it matter. Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, it definitely takes a village, you know, no doubt. And accountability is a problem, you know, and we can talk about some causes for that. Babies raising babies, you know, a lot of the parental rights being taken away by the law and justice system. But, you know, I'm like you, Alonzo. You know, the teachers could spank you when I went to school. Of course, if the parents strike a child now, God forbid you leave a bruise, CPS is at your door with law enforcement, and they're going to take that child away. And so that put a lot of, you know, fear in parents as far as the type of discipline they could do to their children. And now that we do live in social media times, and you know, it's a generation of young people now. They present themselves as just not caring, especially a lot of young males and young females. They don't care, seemingly, and so it's, you know, what's the answer? Hey, as a community, we just have to keep showing them that we care and that love overpowers, you know, fear and evil. Yeah, I think that's just where we are as a society, and we have to just keep plugging away and supporting one another, doing the best that we can, you know, because there are some systemic biases that still exist. We talked in the earlier segment about a lot of those in the education system. We didn't get much into tonight about the systemic biases that are in law enforcement and the justice system, because that's not really where I wanted to go tonight. I wanted to be more community focused and talk about the positive things that we could do to bridge ourselves and become a more cohesive unit that benefits particularly young people and help them grow. So I hope that we can continue these conversations. I really, really thank each of you for coming on. And I don't know if we have any more questions from the audience, but I'll give each of you one last opportunity just to share anything with the audience that you like. We do have a survey that's in the chat. I appreciate if everybody would take that survey. And as our panelist closes out tonight, let us know what you think. And so we'll start with the constable.
So I am having a free food and clothing giveaway this Saturday. And it's going to be here at the precinct 2711 Southeast Loop 410. And it's going to be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So stop by, get you something to eat, get a box of food, and I have some coats and some other donations that people have been kind enough to give me.
Ooh, better stop playing. We'll be there. What's on the menu?
It's called a Mardi Gras Danish. So we're giving away Mardi Gras Danishes, and we're also giving away box food that has spaghetti and nuts and canned goods and things like that.
Awesome, awesome. Officer Ambrose.
Well, one question that was posed to me last December when we were over there at the Lily Valley helping cook at their Christmas event was, why are you here now? And I said, that's an easy question. I said, Danny and I just took over. We had a proposition we had to take care of. And I said, and our second goal was to get back into the community. So I can't say what happened before this current administration, but I can say that under Danny's leadership, we're here and we're going to continue to be here. We know it's going to take a while. We know the road is slow and going, but if you continue to see us out there, you continue to, we have conversations like this tonight, things will change. I have full faith that we can change things and we can get back to where we were at. Slow, but surely, I do believe that.
Thank you. Officer Harden.
Great conversation. I enjoyed partnering with anyone or any organization that is about just what you said, doing something positive in the community. making them positive moves and doing what's needed. So I look forward to not just other platforms such as this, but actually getting out there and doing the work. You know, because like I said earlier, as James Baldwin said, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. I'm about doing. Let's get out there and do something. And, you know, I can accept failure, but I cannot accept giving up. So
Amen.
you just got to keep moving forward, you know. So I love it. Mr. Mims, you did tell me that we would stay in contact. Poof, you're up again, you know. So I see you. I thank everybody for their participation in this. And I work at the Eastside Substation, Safe Unit. That's where you can contact me. Thank you. Thank you, Milton. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Appreciate each of you. Definitely hope that we will continue this discussion offline as well as online. I hope that we can, I'll reach out to Ms. Laura with TAN TV and see if we can get together over Mr. Mims' topic, talking about those youth and you know, a potential internship to put out positive blurbs about policing in the city. I think that would be a great initiative for our youth as well as the community and law enforcement. And just see where that goes. If nothing else, if our president is on, Mr. Ivory Freeman, any last words?
Hey, once again, I think we hit the mark on what our objective was and had a relevant and very positive impact for tonight. Hopefully that this will be shared by a lot of folks and that will continue to increase the popularity of our conversations with the 100, because we're here to engage the community, to be a part of the community. And the only way we can do that is to hear from the community. So Dr. Harris and all of our panelists, thank you very much for your participation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. That's our show for tonight here with Conversations with the 100. Again, I'm Milton Harris, Executive Director with the 100 Black Men of San Antonio. Tell all your friends about us, your family, your loved ones, people out of the country that tune in to us on Thursday nights at 6 p.m. We want to get over 100 viewers a night on here to meet these great panelists, hear the great things that's going on in San Antonio and around the great county. Law enforcement is doing some great work. We look forward to tuning in with you next month.